Hello YouTube world, my name is Nicholas Montez and you're watching my YouTube channel, The Teenage Movie Critic. And welcome back to another YouTube video, everybody. I'm so excited to have you all back here together again. And in today's video, we are doing the other video for my movie series of Decades of Film. And last month we did the 1930s video, if you want to go check that out. But today we are doing my top 10 favorite 1940s movies. So this is kind of an interesting decade in the fact that I personally feel like there's definitely a lot of good movies from this era. Definitely not a lot of films I would go back to, but in most cases, it feels like it's so taken over by like the World War II stuff, which I understand because World War II affected a lot of what was going on during that time. But I'm like, I wish we could experiment more, because everything just kind of felt like film noir and war movies, or like anything after the war. It's like, it was really weird. But I still had a lot of great fun with rewatching some of these films. So without further ado, let's go and get started talking about my top 10 favorite 1940s films. Alright, so now, number 10, I have The Great Dictator. So, of course, I do love this movie. I think, when I first heard about it, I basically heard it as Charlie Chaplin is Hitler. And when I first heard about that, I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. And especially with his style of filmmaking in like the 30s with the short films, well, not the short films, the silent films, I was like, that sounds interesting. The fact that he can be an actor, he could be director, and then at the same time, like, just everything. And I kind of like that it kind of portrayed, like, this propaganda type story of, like, World War II and everything. And, you know, and the thing is, I don't think he's even playing actually Hitler in the movie, but he's playing, like, a propaganda type version of it. And it's goofy and it's silly, but it works so well. So, yeah, I really like The Great Dictator. So now we have They Were Expendable. Now this was one that I was actually interested in because I heard it was like another war movie in the 1940s, but I didn't really know exactly how the story was. And I realized that this is essentially the film that tells the story of when the war started. And I thought what was so compelling about it was making the events of like attack on Pearl Harbor so moving and interesting to where it gets pretty cool, like warfare action and everything, but then it also has a nice love story in the middle of it. So the fact that a film like this can combine both, I think what works really well about it. So yeah, overall I loved They Were Expendable. Alright, so now we have Double Indemnity. So this was actually one of the few noir movies that I honestly, like, really liked. I thought that, like, once again, kind of combining with what They Were Expendable did, where it was mixing a war story with a love story. This one fits into the genre where it's dark and the love story is also dark. And I've seen a lot of movies like that recently that are able to be so dark, and they're able to have like such a dark romance within them, and it's so fascinating. And the fact that this was like one of the first films to kind of do that, I thought was really fascinating, especially when we came from the 1930s with movies like, you know, It Happened One Night, where it was just so cute and romantic. You have this one where it's a little bit romantic, but very dark and scary. So I really enjoyed Double Indemnity. Alright, so now we have The Best Years of Our Lives. And this was one that kind of took me a little while to get used to, because I watched it back then, like during my COVID days, or like during my middle school days, and I liked it at first, but I didn't realize exactly what this was. And when I realized that it was actually about the soldiers coming back from the war, my experience for the film changed everything, because it was a beautiful film. It really was. It was almost 3 hours, like, and just this showing this drama of these soldiers going back to their family, you know, catching up with them, you know, seeing their kids have grown up, and all this stuff was just so interesting. And even like there were actual certain soldiers that like lost limbs, lost hands, and one of them not only received an Oscar for it, but also, you know, it was a real thing that happened. So overall, I thought this was a very pleasant experience of a movie that just worked on all levels.
Sometimes wonder if it's worth all this. I mean, what you're fighting for. Might as well question why we breathe.
You knew how much I loved you, how much I still loved you.
He's looking at you, kid.
Alright, so now we're talking about possibly the most classic film of the 1940s, Casablanca. Now, this is one that took me a little bit of a rewatch to get me back sucked into this movie, because at first glance, I thought this was pretty good, you know, decent, probably something I won't rewatch again, but then I rewatched it with my sister, and I understood a little bit of things. You know, it's like open, kind of like They Were Expendable. This one kind of is like kind of before the war started, and by the same time it's kind of during the war, so it was a very interesting story. But once again, doing that love story packed. But if anything, this is probably the best love story that took place during the war, or during the 1940s. And honestly, you feel for this guy who got left a note from this girl, never seen her again, and basically she has come back, and now he's kind of heartbroken about it. And it's very relatable. It makes a lot of sense, and you can see that the relationship between them kind of got brought back. It's a very interesting love story to do for this kind of movie. I really loved it.
Clang, clang, clang went the trolley. Ding, ding, ding went the bell. Zing, zing, zing went my heartstrings. From the moment I saw him, I fell.
Alright, now we're talking about Meet Me in St. Louis, the other Judy Garland movie that she started besides Wizard of Oz. And I think as another Technicolor masterpiece of a romance movie, or musical too, this movie is great. Judy Garland's performance is great, but also the other family members I thought were also pretty interesting too. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of like It's a Wonderful Life, where it kind of went through all the different seasons. Probably not summer. It mostly went through spring, winter, and fall. But I liked how it did all of that. And, you know, he's kind of exploring this family and like questioning if they're going to move. I think the ending of when they might move gets me a lot. So, yeah, I overall just really love this movie. It's honestly great.
Makes no difference who you are.
Alright, now we have possibly one of the best Disney classics of all time, Pinocchio. And this is one that I remember when I first saw it, or the first few times I saw it when I was younger. I did love it. I think it's a classic Disney film. However, I always thought that kind of Snow White was always better. And I think after rewatching it this time around, I gotta say, I think I kind of like Pinocchio a little bit more than Snow White. Because you kind of enter this movie and we're basically, I think like the first 12, 20 minutes are basically in Geppetto's house at night. And then it just turns into this story about Pinocchio learning right and wrong. And he goes into all these dark places, and you kind of feel emotional for it, but you're also terrified by, like, you know, boys turning into donkeys. Like, it's pretty wild in everything that they do. And then, of course, they go inside a whale. And just everything of the animation and the characters, it's all well crafted. Plus, some of the songs are pretty good, too. I will say, I did have a hard time understanding about kids smoking and drinking. Now I'm a little bit worried as to how did it turn them into donkeys? That's a little weird. But overall, I still love this movie, and I think it's an absolute Disney classic. Alright, now we have Miracle on 34th Street, and this was an absolute Christmas classic about basically a mall Santa Claus actually turning out to be the real Santa Claus that we all know and love. I think this movie is great. The guy that plays Santa Claus is amazing, and the idea of really believing in if Santa Claus is real or not is a very interesting story to tell for a children's story. It's so great. The acting is perfect. And overall, it's just a great little Christmas movie to watch it during Christmas time. I love it.
Walt Disney proudly presents a story of loyalty, courage, and triumph. Make Dumbo your child's first Disney movie in a new Big Top.
Alright, now we have Dumbo, and this is probably one of the most underrated Disney classics for me. Because this movie is so cute and so adorable, to the fact that it can also make you feel very sad and emotional, from Dumbo and his big ears and tripping on them, to Mrs. Jumbo getting locked away and Mrs. Jumbo cuddling with Dumbo through the gate. It's so emotional, but then it also is so artistically creative with like the pink elephant sequence. It's like the way it's able to carry emotions throughout the entire experience and also having triumph at the end is so powerful. This is an absolute Disney classic. Alright, and now let's talk about It's a Wonderful Life. Now, this is a movie that I have seen almost 3 years ago, and pretty much, yeah, this is still an iconic movie. This was kind of one of the first 1940s movies, besides, like, a Disney movie, that I watched it and I was like, this is peak cinema. That this is truly one of the best well-told stories, and I think the reason why is because it feels kind of modern, but also timeless at the same time. And there's not many movies that can do that, but this one handles it seamlessly. Where you tell this man of this who wants to get stuff in the world, but he can't, and so he wants to kill himself, and he gets to see what the world would be like without him. It's such a heartfelt Christmas movie, even though it's not really a Christmas movie. Overall, it's peak cinema, and that's why it's my favorite film of the 1940s.